We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's Shoot the Sheev podcast, we have a whole bunch of people. Unfortunately, I had to make them all watch this Ewok movie that they gloriously enjoyed. But we should talk about who's actually on the podcast. Obviously, myself and Sarah, you've met before. Jeff has been around a little bit.
Hello, thank you for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jeff has been on the original trilogy episodes of the Shoot the Sheev podcast, and then when we talked about holiday special at one point as well. Hopefully this translates well to the projecting, but to my left on my screen currently, we got Kyle. Well, sometimes when I record, the picture will switch, so hopefully we're pointing in the right direction.
I'm just picking on you.
And then to my right, we got Josh. Yeah, we'll just kind of get rolling into talking about today's subject, which is the Ewok adventure called the Caravan of Courage. I think it was Josh that was looking up some info about the movie after we watched it. Was it just called like the Ewok Adventure, or did they like add the title later on?
Well, so that was interesting because I didn't actually give the title. It just indicated that to release it internationally, they changed it to the Caravan of Courage. So, don't know.
So it makes me wonder.
On IMDb, it's called the Ewok Adventure, but then on Wikipedia, it's called Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure.
Interesting.
And they're saying it was retitled as it was Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure for the international release.
So it's kind of interesting how they didn't even like slap Star Wars on it. It's kind of like if you know, you know, kind of a thing. So yeah, we sat down, we watched it. We all watched it for the first time. So when we talk about, you know, how much we liked and disliked of the film, it's all fresh. We literally just got done watching like 15, 20 minutes ago. So I'm excited to hear what we all have to say about it. I feel like we had a good time while watching it. More or less like
it was a featuring good time.
It was. We learned Ewokanese, which is what Josh just used.
If you're going to get one thing out of this movie, it's how to swear in Ewok language. It's pretty good.
Yeah, you can tell. Dude. What was that?
I called Jeff a Lurdo.
Oh.
I'm not a Lurdo. You're a Lurdo.
You're a featuring Lurdo.
You shut your featuring mouth.
One thing, like I didn't even think about doing this until Kyle brought it up. He had asked to put subtitles on. And I think that was like really good.
Yeah.
Because you get to actually see like what are they saying, and it kind of helps piece together what these words might be, how like we interpreted some of the swearing that they probably are trying to get across, but they get away with it in the PG film. Because if this wasn't Ewokanese, I'm pretty sure it'd be rated R. With all the F words that were flying around.
There is an extended scene of like stabbing a spider pretty violently, which was pretty great. I was waiting for somebody to get stabbed by that knife.
Yeah. I was hoping to see some like goo or something coming out, like blood or ooze, but yeah, it's pretty low budget to say the least. I think it was released on TV first, if I am not mistaken, right?
Well, that's where I'm thinking it was that international theatrical release, meaning that it did hit theaters, but it must have been not well received enough, and it went to TV. But I didn't find anything else. I didn't dig super deep, but I didn't find anything else that spoke to its release nature.
The full IMDb title was The Ewok Adventure, TV movie 1984. So I guess that's how IMDb differentiates this from the other Ewok movie.
So maybe it was released domestically on TV and then internationally in theaters.
So I don't know if you want me to read Wiki straight off, but basically I'm finding here that it was released on the 25th of November, 1984 as a TV release, and it hit its overseas theatrical release where it was christened as Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure. It was released to VHS and Laserdisc in 1990. So Laserdisc, somebody paid $95 for that movie back in 1990, which would have been like, $500 now.
Is that how much it cost for a Laserdisc?
Laserdiscs were insanely expensive, and they were really huge. Yeah. They were huge. Yeah, they were like vinyl sized, but they were a CD basically.
Gotcha. I've seen them before, but I did not know the market. That's
crazy. They were really expensive. But they were also much better video quality. I mean, that was before they had DVDs. It was the same idea, just without the compression rate. So,
gotcha. So we should talk about some of the characters from this movie. I know Jeff's favorite character has got to be Mace.
No, my favorite character is the Gimli guy.
I was teasing because of how much you hated him.
Sorry, you're joking. Yeah. No, the kid, no, he's a total jerk. Basically they're trying to like help him find their parents, but he just every time he's a jerk. He runs off at one point and gets attacked by a monster. They save his life and he's still a jerk. And then like they give him like little special objects to help them along the way in their journey, kind of like Galadriel in Lord of the Rings. And he just doesn't take his. And luckily Wicket grabs his rock that he's given, and that helps them eventually find where they need to go. So this kid, I mean, he's a burden upon the caravan of the ring, and he's no help.
Now you know how we feel about you.
All right, I'll just I'll see myself out. See you guys later.
So you bring up a good point, like some of the plot lines of the movie. I think basically what this movie boils down to is there was a ship crash on Endor. The kids of the family left the ship when the parents had left, and they came back to find their kids at the ship, but the kids left. So then this whole movie is basically the kids left, they're trying to find their parents, and then come to find out their parents were taken by this big monster named Gorax. Is that what his name was?
Gorax.
Gorax. So then the kids have to go and save the parents from this big monster, and that's essentially what the movie is. It kind of gave me, I mean, don't hate me for saying this, but it kind of gave me, what's that movie? Willow? Have you guys seen Willow?
Yeah, it's kind of kind of that vibe.
Yeah, it reminded me of that one quite a bit. We got a ton of Ewoks in this movie, which is pretty cool. Getting to expand on the Ewok lore with not only the language, but we also got to see some of the different creatures of Endor, which surprised us, a good handful of them.
Especially since most of them were normal farm animals from here. I mean, we saw like a horse, a llama, or maybe an alpaca. I'm not sure on the difference, to be honest. There was a ferret, chickens.
Goat.
Yep, there were goats.
Goat.
There were a couple of non-American or non-Earth creatures too, like Gorax.
The like ROUS style were rat that was terrifying.
Yeah, howled at the moon, and then it chased them when the kid runs off. Remember when the crystal turns into a lizard in the little kid's hand? And he's not impressed. He's just like, I've seen this. What did he say? He's just like, this is dumb. I've seen this.
That's not a big deal. It just turned into a lizard. So
yeah, it's not a big deal.
And then the sister picked it up and it turned into a mouse.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We never saw it turn back into a rock, but apparently that did, because she had that thing to be able to
Yeah.
Isn't it the crystal, yeah, on
Yeah,
top of the little staff that gets him out of trouble twice?
yeah,
Was that what that was? I thought he
yeah.
already had something on his staff.
No, that's the thing, is that they put the crystal in his hand, and it turned into and then it came back. They used it later. The wizard Ewok that had the pointy hat, um, that was able to make the spider fall asleep, right? And then the stalag tight that fell on the giant, whatever giant thing that was Gorax.
Orax.
Yeah.
One of the other like really interesting things about this movie, which was kind of shockerish to me, was uh the narrator of the story. Sarah, I know you looked up who the narrator was, but I remember as soon as we heard the intro to the film, it was like we were watching Rudolph.
Burl Ives. Burl Ives recorded, he was the snowman and narrator in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in 1964. And then in 1984, he was the narrator for this movie. And this movie doesn't have a ton of narration. It's kind of heavy in narration at the very beginning and then little tiny pieces sprinkled throughout. But it was really interesting to hear that voice that we recognize from seeing Rudolph. I mean, we watch it pretty much every year. So
Yeah,
Had
they use that narration kind of when they need to, because everybody, the Ewoks are speaking Ewokese, and so when they need like to actually clarify what's going on and like exposition wise, they have the narrator come in and help us figure out what's actually happening.
do you
Yep.
think
it's something that the holiday special probably could have had that would have made it a little bit better.
Yeah, can we talk about this compared to the holiday special? Because this is far superior. It looks like a real movie. There's an actual plot to it. So even though there's the Ewoks talking in a different language, you don't know exactly what they're saying. It's way better than the grunts and howls of Chewbacca's family and everything. And yeah, it is far superior. Holiday special is a lot more fun to make fun of, but it's such a slog to actually sit down and watch for 2 hours. This was a little bit, well, not a little bit, but a lot nicer to actually get through.
Yeah, I was actually a little more interested in like what happens next with this one as opposed to the holiday special. That was actually going to be one of my questions too. Was do you think that they learned from the holiday special, and that's why that the narrator became part of this one? Because like you said, that's what really separates it. Because I think right off the bat, you're like, oh, that's another holiday special situation when all the Ewoks were just basically grunting back and forth, and then we got that narrator to come in and helped push the story along. It was good.
Well, did they have? I mean, so they had ILM and they had Hanson's team. I can't remember what the name of it was for this in the credits, but I don't think they had that kind of support for the holiday special, right? Like that
No.
was, I think, a big part of what we talked about was that there was, I mean, some of the effects were very much 1980 earlys, but there was definitely a better cinematographical, and that's a word, setup that it just made it much more entertaining. It was not so, like you said, Jeff, a slog.
Yeah, I mean, Holiday Special is just a variety show that was thrown together, based on the success of capitalizing on the original Star Wars. And, it is what it is. But this looked like they actually put some effort. It doesn't have the same budget as like Return of the Jedi or anything, but it looks like they were trying to capitalize again on the success and popularity of Ewoks with kids. But it looks like they actually put effort into some of the set design and everything. The Ewok village shows up again and looks pretty good. There's a lot of matte paintings that look really good. The music is nice and cinematic. Yeah, it feels like a real movie, which is a lot more than I expected coming in.
Yeah.
I think another thing that was really nice that separates this one from the holiday special was like I know Josh asked about, how much involvement did ILM have with the holiday special? And I think it's almost a loaded answer to say yes, because technically what they did with a lot of their transition shots with the holiday special is literally strip them from A New Hope and then pasted them into the holiday special. So yes and no on that, but I'm glad that they didn't do that with Return of the Jedi and this one, because it's the same setting. They're still on Endor, but they didn't like chop things out of Return of the Jedi and then paste them into here. It helped them, in my opinion, to uh, make this basically its own and not have to rely on stuff they've done before already.
Well, and I think Jeff was the one that was saying, like, when do we get to see the village or the whatever that for the Ewok town that you see in the Star Wars movies that you actually do end up getting to see. And it, to your point, I think that was either the original set that they were actually able to go back into and continue to film new material in, or they did a very good job of recreating that set with the budget that they obviously, they did not have a ton, but they did enough. They had enough to make that, which was good. It really tied the movies together, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if they reused footage that maybe they had taken before, but it didn't look like footage that shows up in Return of the Jedi. So it might have just been other shots that they didn't use originally. But either way, it worked well. It was good to see Low Gray, is that his name? The Ewok that is like black and kind of silver and has like stripies. He's got
I was
like
gonna say the striped Ewok. Yeah.
Yeah. It was good to see like a familiar Ewok besides Wicket, because I think one of the problems that the movie suffered from was differentiating between the Ewoks. It was like Wicket's like family, I think, at the beginning, and they all have the same headdress and they look very similar. And it wasn't until Sarah pointed out that Wicket always has like the kind of diagonal little kind of strip on his headdress that finally you can tell which one's Wicket and everything. So I would have liked to have seen differentiation between the Ewoks like they do in Return of the Jedi. Like each of them you can kind of tell are kind of individuals and everything.
Yeah, that's actually probably a pretty good transition to some of the tough loves we've had. So is there anything else that you guys want to touch on about the movie in general?
I'll let that be mine.
I'm kind of curious why they cast the kid Mace to look like Luke a little. Like he did look like Luke to me. So I don't know if that was like to kind of get older people that have seen them all instead of just kids to come. It's like, oh, that kind of looks like Luke. Or if it was just a coincidence that he did look like them.
I kind of wonder if that may have, like, seeing the original trilogy and then seeing that guy on the screen, I wonder if it made people wonder if this was, I think we talked about it when we were watching the movie. Maybe it was some sort of like early tale that Luke was involved in. And, once you start watching the movie, of course, you find out right away he's got a different name. But from the outside looking in at like a poster or something, you might have that kind of intrigue, and then that would pull you into the movie theater, and then you end up finding out it's not, but at least it's a decent story that they expanded on with Star Wars.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a picture of what I believe is the VHS cover, and he is not in that outfit on the cover. He's in like a tan jacket, like a tan and brown jacket. It's not orange at all.
Well, and it makes you wonder if just it's a familiarity, right? Like if you grew up with Luke in that, I don't know if it's a starfighter uniform or exactly what it is, that's that pilot outfit that he wears. Maybe I could see tons of kids being like, I'm pro revolution kind of side of things, and it like kids now will wear their favorite Thor costumes and whatever, and Spider-Man, because that's their heroes, right? Like I could see Luke being their hero. So maybe that's because I was wondering the same thing. Like, why is he wearing something that looks like he's trying to be a pilot?
I say I can't speak for the generation because obviously I wasn't around back then, but it makes me wonder if that hairstyle was popular too.
It was. I was going to say to that, like that. I mean, so the look was a very '80s look, like that. That was pretty classic kid. So, um, I think the thing that really made him look more like Luke was the fact that he was wearing that outfit. That's what sold it to me. Was he very much had that, like, I'm trying to personify Luke Skywalker. So
Gotcha. Yeah, that's all interesting stuff to take into consideration when you watch the movie. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and take a quick break here, and then when we come back, we're gonna talk about some of our tough loves for Caravan of Courage. So stick around. Have you ever wondered what Amazon coffins are and what they're full of? Well, we got you covered here on the channel. Check out our playlist of our Amazon coffin unboxings, where Sarah and I open up boxes that have Amazon returns, and we share with all of you what we get in each of those boxes. If you ever wanted to get into liquidation and want to know what types of things you can find, check us out. Now back to our show. Welcome back, everybody. We are here to talk about our tough loves for the Caravan of Courage. And Sarah wants to start off for us. So what you got?
In this movie, the Ewoks learn English. This drove me nuts. They do not know English in Return of the Jedi. They don't know, they don't pick up on any English from Leia. They're not able to say any English to her. This movie is supposed to take place before then, I'm pretty sure. So, like, why are they learning English? And they're learning it so easily, too. Like, they learn, I don't know, at least 10 to 20 words over the course of this movie. It's not like they're able to finally pick up one word by the end of the movie, but, like, they learn so many that you'd think that when they're working with Leia, either Warwick Davis played Wicket, so that's why I said Warwick.
Isn't Wicket's last name Warwick?
It is Wicket Warwick, yes. But Wicket is a character in both films, so you can't just say like, oh, well, this was a different tribe of Ewoks that maybe they knew they were able to pick up the language, and the ones from Return of the Jedi couldn't, because Wicket is in both films. So it's a discontinuity that really bothered me. And I get that it's cute because they use that to be able to play with the kids, especially the little girl in this film. But that was one thing that I did not like.
well, and to your point, they don't just learn a few words. They actually at one point they use sentences and say, "We will help you," which is like,
Yes.
that's full on grammatical understanding of a language. No, they didn't. Yeah, I'm with you. That's a little weird. That it's yub dub in most of Return of the Jedi, and there's full on, yeah.
Yeah. Jeff, what was one thing that you have for tough love?
Yeah, so I kind of already talked about a little bit of tough love, which was differentiating between the Ewoks. I'll elaborate on that a little bit. So, being called Ewoks Caravan of Courage, we're looking at Ewoks on the screen for 99% of the movie. So being able to kind of see differences between characters, who's talking, not only what they're saying, but one of the things is we kept trying to keep track of the names of these Ewoks, and we couldn't even do that. I don't know how many I can name. There's Wicket. There's there's Chukka Truck. What's his name? And Logray, who we've seen before. There's one called Deej. There's what's it called? Weedle. Which
There's Whittle and Weechie are
Weechie.
Wicket's brothers or sisters.
Yeah.
Brothers,
Okay.
sisters? I don't know. Siblings.
Yeah. And without any of the subtitles on, so the subtitles are nice because the names come up non-italicized, and then the language comes up italicized, so you can kind of tell which is which. But if I saw a lineup of the Ewoks, I could barely tell Wicket apart, and I could tell like Logray because he's very distinctive. There's the one that has the axe that I could tell apart, but all the other ones I have no idea. And so, yeah, I was just disappointed with that. Those are supposed to be the characters we're supposed to kind of get to know and bond with, and it's not like they need full story arcs. But if they had like even just differences in appearance or behaviors that they do, it would just make all the difference in actually connecting with the Ewoks on screen. Yeah.
Difficult to even show their age difference too, because one of them is Wicket's dad compared to Wicket's siblings, and I wasn't able to tell the difference between them.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of it's hard. That's where most of our effort went to, and yeah, it's so in the holiday special we keep comparing it back to that because there we can't tell what they're really saying. At least in the holiday special, we can tell who's who between the Wookiees, but here it's the opposite problem. We can kind of tell what they're saying a little bit, but we can't tell the difference between their names and who they are, their relationships to one another, and everything.
Well, and I think to that point, their costumes didn't help. So, like you had mentioned earlier, how Wicket's headdress had some asymmetry to it that allowed you to kind of discern him because, and he looked familiar because he looks the same as Return of the Jedi. So, but the other family members had the same color and kind of design mantra of their costumes to their clothing, quote unquote, and that made it, to your point, yeah, very difficult to know who's who and you know who's what. One of the things that bugged me a little bit with that from like the movie's perspective, and I don't know if this is totally tough love, but Chuck was like human sized. He was full on riding a horse at a gallop, a horse, right? Not like a pygmy horse or like a
donkey,
or pony, right? Like full on man sized horse, right? Or a full adult horse that he's riding around trying to chase after the other horse that was running away with the younger sister in the movie, the human sister. And that was a thing. That was a small thing, but that one was irksome. I don't know if I'm stealing somebody else's thunder here on order. I think the other thing that bugged me, tough love wise, was their ability to quote unquote win. In like Return of the Jedi, they battle. They do they being the Ewoks. They are aggressive. They have spears and they throw rocks, and they kind of do that in this movie. It definitely felt a little bit more kid friendly in that, but like they're up against this giant Gorax, literally giant, and at the very end of the movie, they find a way to trip him in a classic, Lucasfilm style, and he falls down a hole. Like I don't know. I felt like there was definitely more opportunity for them to, blind him with the widgets, Wixies, I think Wixies, or do other things to kind of be more Ewok-esque in their ability to kind of be small but mighty, and that fell short for me. I felt like, okay, there's this giant thing, and I don't know if it was who it was that with the red headdress. I don't remember who it was that they were all wearing different headdresses that were supposed to be their protection or their role. I'm not sure exactly what the headdresses spoke to, but he distracted Gorax while they saved the parents, so to speak, and that I don't know. It just felt anticlimactic in that regard.
It didn't feel earned.
Yeah,
I could see that. One before I get to my tough love, one interesting thing is that apparently on IMDb they actually have the translations to what these words mean. We got one of them correct, actually.
Is it Gunda?
It is. We got that one right. Gunda means good. It also means yummy, apparently. So it means good in relation to taste, I suppose. Yeehaw means goodbye. Yub means hooray. Acha is all right. Feech means dang. Lurdo means
Oh,
loser. Tiety is come. Kush is who or what. Rhoda means eat. Chak means yes. Den means no. And Jeeks means that. So we got one of them right. The Gunda. I like it. So my tough love is a little nerdy, but I didn't like like Star Wars is known for like really cool designs and stuff, whether it's a weapon, a ship, and whatnot. We've already kind of talked about how the main character Mace looks like Luke, so it's kind of like almost, and also the Ewoks don't look too different from one another. So the design of some of the stuff is lazy, and one of the ones that I really didn't like was Mace's blaster. Um, his blaster looks like if you were to buy a very generic toy soldier and the little plastic gun that comes with it, that's what his looks like. It doesn't look unique like the Star Wars blasters do. And not only that, I feel like someone just was like, go to the sound department and just pick a noise from Star Wars of shooting, and somehow they landed on TIE fighter blasts for how his gun sounds when he shoots. So that was his first shot, but then the gun doesn't even seem consistent with the way it shoots. It has like a normal quote unquote shooting feature, and then it has like a beam that it does, and then there's one where the bullet like wiggles around like a water snake as it's approaching its
yeah. It's
where
like
it's being
shooting
shot at.
spaghetti. It's like this proton packs in
It,
Ghostbusters.
it,
It's
it
great.
very much reminded me of proton packs. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
so
changing color too. When it was doing the initial blast, the
yeah,
blaster was yellow, but then when it was doing the beam, it was red. And he never calls it a blaster, he calls it a gun, which is very weird because I don't remember them ever using the word gun in Star Wars. They always call it a blaster.
Yeah.
yeah, so I really didn't like the laziness and the lack of care for some of the things that in my opinion were iconic for Star Wars, being the design and the soundboard. So Kyle, did you have something that you didn't like in the film?
Yeah, I think it was like them throwing in what it seems like magic. Like at the time, I don't think they ever really referenced anything like that. So I thought it was weird to throw that in and kind of like a side story instead of like a main movie.
Like I don't remember his name. The one that had like the wizard.
Yeah, like the wizard guy where he used his staff to hypnotize the spider and then also blow up something on the ceiling
Yeah, one of the
to help
rocks.
them escape. Yeah. So I'm not sure if that was magic, but it kind of seemed like it. And then when the rock turned into a lizard and a mouse, it just like it seemed out of left field at the time. Like now they've added kind of that stuff, but um at the time it just seemed weird.
It would have been nice to get a little more clarification on, like we said, we were all wondering, is this lizard and mouse thing gonna end up being a thing later on? Uh,
Yeah.
or just the relation, like if it would have been like, we all know that there's the lion and the lamb kind of connection that's out there. Like, what does a lizard have to do with the mouse? Or maybe if his would have been a snake and hers would have been a mouse. Like, all those things have connections, but I don't really know what lizard means.
Mhm.
So what if we did this? Remember when the kid takes his blaster and he just talks to it and he's like, "I know you got power in there." And then it comes out like the stream and he's breaking through a rock and it just hits this rock and then it explodes. What if instead of doing that, they had a callback to changing the crystal into the lizard and they used like the little wand and changed that big boulder into like, I don't know, an armadillo or something. Like, it transformed that and then it's actually a consistent kind of magic system. I kept waiting for the magic to have some tie-in to like force powers, and we were going to get an Ewok to, like moving boulders and using the force. but that never happened.
Yeah, if they made it more consistent, it would have been better, I think, but it's kind of like only in certain circumstances that it worked.
I
Yeah,
forget what
they use the magic whenever they need to get out of a problem and they don't know, like the script writers didn't know what else to do.
Mhm.
I forget what that's called. It's like when, like you said, when there's nothing you can do, so the answer is the staff.
Yeah,
Forget.
it's like a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah. Interesting.
The more I'm looking at the movie poster or like the VHS cover, I think it is the same outfit, but they recolored it because all of the characters on the poster, with the exception of Low Gray, are in this like kind of orangish brown tint. So it's very brown muted coloring. And then Low Gray's in the back in like this weird like dark blue slash gray coloring to mirror the rest of the background. So maybe it was the same outfit because sorry, it was something that was bothering me of like why would they change his outfit from the VHS cover to the actual film? And so I think it's the same outfit. They just recolored it for whatever reason.
It's so if it's the same thing, it's got the mountain and the moon in the back at the very top right. Is that what you're looking at? Yeah. So I'm looking. It's listed as a promotional poster on Wiki. I would agree with you. It's very like yellow filtered so that you can't like they've detailed it in a way by putting it on the poster that way. Kind of watercolor poster is kind of what I'm thinking when I look at the poster itself. Is kind of has that drawn effect.
I think I'm looking at the same poster, and I can totally understand everything that Josh just said about that. But what about the disservice to the Wisties?
Yeah.
They're all different colors.
Well, and to your point with the Wisties, so that was a thing that I can't remember if it was Jeff that just said it or if it was Kyle, but hoping that something else was going to happen, they made this whole 10-minute scene, roughly 5-10 minute scene of the Wisties flying around and floating around and all these things, and the little girl's Sindel, who was given this magic candle, and they all fly into the candle except for one. Was it Azithra or something like that? Anyway, that
Azarina?
yeah, that was a lot of magic that flew into this candle, and then that's that. Like there's nothing else that comes about from it. So it definitely seems like from a writer's perspective, they had a bunch of ideas and then they never finished them. They created this pathway of I'm going to be able to do something with this, and then they never did anything with it.
Yeah.
One other like problem that we need to talk about is when they're saving the parents from the cage in Gorax's little den. There's this cage, and like the bars are big enough for them to fit through. And so they catapult with Gorax's axe, they catapult Mace up into the cage, and he just walks in. Oh, parents, you're here. And then they throw like a vine rope up there. And then another, I think it is a Wicket, who like goes up the rope and goes into the cage. Just throw the rope, the parents can get out, because then they just crawl through and lower themselves down very slowly. It's just the most backwards way of doing. We kept comparing this to like a D&D campaign of just all these little dumb side things that we do along the way. That was one of them. Like the logistics of getting out of that cage was just awful.
Maybe they didn't know how to tie an Endorian knot.
I
I
guess.
thought it was also weird that water scene where he got stuck under the water. Like I don't understand why that was included, or like if that was meant to add something to the story or like the lore of the planet.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like time filler.
Yeah.
It's
They didn't
interesting.
even they didn't even use the magic like stick with the rock on it. They just used one of Wicket's sticks that was supposed
Yeah.
to be magic.
But what that was the stick that was given to him by Logray, though. Like it was something that there was. I mean, it was tied to that situation. So the thing that it's again, it's kind of that disconnectedness between this moon of Andor and the same moon of Andor with the same Ewoks. All this magic and all these the mythical creatures that were like with the RUS were rat thing, right? That they end up killing and like I don't know, in Return of the Jedi, that's you don't get any sense of there being any other oddities in the area. It's a forest with Ewoks, and I feel like they tried to create more world than they needed to. I don't know if it's the need to. I'm not sure, but yeah, it that was questionable, I guess is a good way to put it.
I mean, like how they also threw in a desert.
Right.
Yeah, on the Forest Moon of Endor. I thought would have been cool is if so this is a prequel to Return of the Jedi, and it would have been cooler if they did it after and like there was some kind of the Death Star coming down and hitting the planet and everything. He's dying, and you'd have like kind of the spooky area and everything. But of course they didn't, you know. So Forest Moon of Endor has desert in it.
We just had a little bit of a Wi-Fi issue, so we're coming back to you. I think Jeff had mentioned something about hoping that this movie would have been after Return of the Jedi, because maybe some of the terrain would have been messed up from the Death Star explosion. The only thing that I was going to say after that was I kind of wonder if in episode 9, when they had pieces of the Death Star on another planet, if maybe that did it to that planet. Who knows? We don't really know anything else about that other planet. But to kind of close out this segment, we just talked about our tough loves. So when we come back, we're going to talk about things that we liked. So stick around. Have you ever wondered what it's like to grow up during the prequel era? Do you wonder what type of merchandise was around then? How different was it than it is now? Check out our videos on this channel where we talk about the merchandise of the Phantom Menace and the merchandise of Attack of the Clones. They are here on this channel. The Phantom Menace is my first video ever on YouTube, so there's a special place in my heart for that one. So please, if any, check that out. Now back to our show. Welcome back, everybody. We got our things that we liked about Caravan of Courage. We didn't talk about who wanted to start. Sarah, do you want to start off again?
Oh goodness. I was not prepared.
I'm prepared.
Go for it.
Go for it, Josh.
So the acting from Mace, the boy, was somewhat to be desired, but out of a budget in this regard. It wasn't terrible. I actually really, really enjoyed Sindel, the little girl. She was, for somebody who maybe is all of 6, she did a really good job of dealing with a lot of stuff that would have been like CG'd at that point, right? Like CGI'd, I guess, maybe a better word. Alphabet, whatever. But I think she did a great job for dealing with special effects stuff. She was believable, and she played the scared little girl really well without like being like overly dramatic about it. So I actually really liked her portrayal. It's a pretty specific thing, but I think that trying to call out something that I really enjoyed, she did a really good job.
Nice. One of the things, kind of speaking about that I thought was interesting about the movie, I don't know, because I don't know all the different makeup things that they got out there, but there was one scene that she was doing where I think she was supposed to be crying and almost looked like wax or something that they put on her to make it so that the teardrops were there. I thought that was
It was
interesting.
just hot glue.
I think it's glycerin. I think is something or something like that. That's basically like a gel based thing that so it doesn't move, but it looks like tears. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've heard of the like spray someone in the eye with like some cleaner or whatever, and it'll make them cry. But it was kind of different.
Just spray them with bleach right in the eyes.
Yeah, or pepper spray. I know that something that I liked, and it's interesting because I feel like a lot of it was talked about in the dislike section. I like just learning about more lore about Endor. Not only the language, but some of the creatures was kind of cool. The story is pretty straightforward and simple. It's a TV movie, it's not overly thought out or whatever. But I thought just seeing all the different things and there was neat. I liked the big giant at the end. He was cool.
Corax.
I know it was very laughable to see the wolf thing that was attacking them. I think Jeff was talking about how it looked like a hand puppet.
Well, there's some shots where it's like clay stop motion, but then it's intermixed with a couple shots of where it's very obviously just somebody's hand and like a puppet. It's great.
Yeah. I've mentioned on previous podcasts that, there's obviously tons and tons of media for Star Wars. And although I'd love to be able to read and watch them all, the biggest thing that I have issues with is that some of them really don't add anything to Star Wars lore, and I feel like I waste my time. Whereas, like, I think with this movie, even though the plot was fairly simple, I think it was cool to actually learn about all that extra stuff, just to be able to, paint the picture of Endor a little bit more. So that's what I liked.
I liked that we got to see Ewok actually use one of those hang gliders. I thought that was pretty neat, as he wasn't intentionally gliding, but he was like ready to glide, and then the goat ate the rope, which let the glider go. So that was kind of funny. First of all, why are there goats here? Because it just, you're not used to seeing animal like our farm animals there, but just to see a goat eat the rope and then that makes the glider go off. And although that was kind of a storyline that didn't necessarily make sense because it was like Wicked's dad looking for Wicked's siblings or something like that, and I'm not sure if he found them or not, but eventually they showed up. It's all kind of weird and confusing, but it's fun, so I thought that was cute. Jeff, I'm sure you want to talk about the spiders.
Yes, that was my favorite scene. So they're going in towards the end to find the parents in the cage with Gorax, and they're basically going through what feels like the mines of Moria, and they eventually get to like Shelob's lair, even though I know that in Lord of the Rings it's not the same thing. But they have to go across effectively like this big web, and it's so good when they're just walking like and scaling this little web, and out of nowhere this little Halloween spider just like comes down, and it's like not moving at all. It's just plastic, and you could see like the little strings on it, and then they just, I don't know, they just like cut it and it just falls down. And there's another one which is a little bit more involved. You see some close-ups on the face and it's pretty scary, but on Disney Plus it's better quality than it would have been on VHS or TV, and you can definitely see strings. I just get a big kick out of that. It was so obviously just like this Halloween store plastic spider that didn't move. It just lowered down. I loved it. I was howling with laughter. It was great.
One
It's
of
not
the
like
spiders even had like venom or something oozing from its fangs. That was kind of neat to see.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh yeah. And then so after they get across to kill that second spider, they cut one little side of it, and that apparently was like the linchpin holding the entire web together, because it just, with that one cut the whole web falls down. First, because webs work like that. Yeah. And it was, I'm pretty sure that so there was like a little bit more cobwebby stuff towards where the characters were, but when you see the net, or the web fall, it's obviously like a like a fish net. It's,
Mm.
I don't know, they didn't put the biggest budget into that scene, but I was very enjoyable and fun.
I actually thought it was really cool to that second bigger like mama spider. Um, we could see the strings, and it was clearly a marionette. That was actually kind of cool that they were using. I mean, you don't think of. I mean, that would have been old school special effects to use, but that to use an actual marionette, puppet, quote unquote, that was pretty cool. I
It's a very generous use of marionette. It just had like some strings that it kind of like barely moved back and
right,
forth.
yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like it was intricate enough where like the head was moving and stuff, but some of the
Yeah.
legs.
yeah. Maybe their marionette was not a marionette master.
Yeah.
What was one of the things that you enjoyed?
I really like the background and environments they showed. I thought they were really well and thought out. Um, and it was cool to see like Endor. Like I know it's weird that they had a desert when we're used to like a forest, but it's cool to see more of that and how they did depict it.
I would
Yeah, that was
agree
definitely really
that
neat to see.
yeah, and it really did um, tie well with Return, and like the. I mean, Jeff kind of jokingly said, "Oh, that doesn't look like Northern California at all." But in tying fashion, though, that it was good that it did, because that's exactly what it looks like when Luke is on the speeder bike, right? I mean, it very much tied together that atmosphere. So that was cool. I agree. They did a good job there.
Speaking of the backgrounds, I just quickly looked up when was the second Death Star in production, and apparently it started like right after the Battle of Yavin, and so like as soon as the one exploded, they started building the other one. So that makes me believe like maybe we could have seen some production of the Death Star in the background. I think that would have been kind of a nice touch or nod to Return of the Jedi. It probably wouldn't have been very much, but since it was still in production during Return of the Jedi, would have been kind of neat. Well, what's that
Yeah.
circle kind of a thing?
There's no indication within the movie that it's a prequel to Return of the Jedi.
Right.
There's no tie into that. It could have just as easily, they just could have said like it was after the fact. Yeah.
I also like I think it's what it is, like where they do a shot by shot of like something moving with the arrowhead. It's just like
Oh yeah,
that old kind of like fashion and like I don't know if it's a animation style or whatever that is, but
stop motion. I think.
I really like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, I'm
spoilers
really
for all the
like,
fans. He gets the rock and then he eventually breaks it open and there's an arrowhead in it. And he just like puts it on the ground basically and it like spins and points and then it runs along this little track in the sand. And it goes into like the secret cave, and that's where he explodes the rock with his proton pack.
Mm,
Makes me wonder how we couldn't hear that when he was like
right.
or
His dumb rock.
salting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
to me, it looked like a magnet was dragging it across the sand. Like if
Yeah.
you think of those toys you may have gotten as a kid in like a stocking stuffer or something, the bald guy with all the little magnetic hair you'd move
Mhm.
around.
Yeah.
Um,
Wooly Billy.
Yes.
yeah. I really liked from as a musician, I really liked the music composition. I think it's obviously not John Williams, but the composer did a really good job of trying to match that very like march like militant like music, and at the same time, make it his own. And it was good. It wasn't like cheesy or corny. It was well done music as well. So that was another thing that I think helped bring some, what's the word, viability to the movie. Like it made it more respectable or viable, that it increased its viewer value with that music.
Yeah, it gave it a certain production value. Like you said, it's not John Williams, but it says at the end of the credits, adapted from John Williams stuff. There's a lot of motifs that are similar in there. At one point, you hear that theme that plays when Wicket and Leia meet in Return of the Jedi. So there's like little snippets there, and then yeah, it's the same style, which is really nice. It's different than like the holiday special, which has awful music in it. And so yeah, this, like you said, it feels like a real movie.
Yeah.
Which just adds to the whole authentic, its own type thing, which was really nice. Was there anything else you guys wanted to mention that you really liked?
So it's actually, I'm thinking about it now after the fact. We kind of harshed on their magic vibe a little bit, being that like magic isn't really in anything else Star Wars wise, and or too much magic really in anything else. But if we kind of go back to like the whole idea where who was the medicine man? I can't think of his name. Logray. He's also the one that is in Return of the Jedi who recognizes C-3PO as a god. And so there's definitely a mysticism that the Ewoks must believe in. And so to have magic in a society that has that kind of mythical belief system, it actually starts to make a little bit more sense. And I didn't think through that until we were actually talking about it shooting this. So that I'm going to kind of revert some of my, I don't really appreciate the magic stuff to, I actually kind of do it. It kind of, to your point, Jeremy, it adds some lore and some moon/planetary it's their own world, and it gave some depth to the world. So I actually think it's all right. I think it makes sense. So
it is kind of interesting. I mean, at this time, there wasn't a whole lot of, like when this movie came out, there wasn't a whole lot of magic in Star Wars outside of the Force. They've kind of expanded on that a little bit. But kind of like how you're saying, you don't really think of like religious stuff too much when it comes to Star Wars, but I had read something like someone had said like Christianity is in Star Wars, and I was like, that sounds ridiculous. But there's like this small little segment where in Empire Strikes Back, someone says to Han, like, you'll freeze before you reach whatever, when he goes to find Luke, and then Han says, I'll see you in hell. And so there's like these small little cues of like religious things that apparently are in Star Wars. And yeah, that might be one that they build off of it on the planet of Endor.
It's actually really funny you say that, because the mom said, "Oh God," and I was like, "They have gods?" And it just, that yeah, it's an interesting. I think we have a tendency to just include our own stuff in things that we write or create. So
yeah. All right. Well, that was the things that we really liked about this movie. When we come back, we're going to have some closing thoughts and wrap it up. So stick around. Have you seen The Mandalorian? Do you wonder what Operation Cinder was that they mentioned in this show? Well, we got you covered, because we have an entire playlist dedicated to the Star Wars Battlefront 2 campaign, which highlights Operation Cinder. So if you check out our playlist, you'll be able to see what actually happened with Operation Cinder and know what they're talking about with the show. Now back to ours. All right, welcome back for our final segment here. Sarah told us in the break that she had a question for us to ponder. So what you got?
Okay, so we've got the one Ewok. I don't know his name, but he's one that's new to this film because I don't remember seeing him before. He's got the special, like, wizard-like hat.
Is he the wizard?
Kank.
What was it?
It was like Kank or Dank or something. Yeah. Yes.
There is one listed on the cast as Kank. I did not realize that was one of their names. So yes, anyway, thank you. So he's got this magical staff that is essentially a stick with a glowing rock at the end. So it's very much giving you like wizard type vibes and magical type vibes. Do you think that it's truly introducing magic and like D&D type characteristics to Star Wars? Or is he a force wielder that just instead of using like his own fingers with force lightning, he manifests his force abilities through this stick?
Huh.
Well, what kind of crystal? Darn it. Dr. Star Wars. What's the name of the crystals that power lightsabers?
Kyber crystal?
Kyber crystal. So maybe it was like Kyber crystal-esque. Yeah, it could certainly. I mean, I think the idea behind Star Wars, from everything that I've understood, and at least you guys have talked about other magic, and I guess I'm not familiar with any other magic in any of the 9 movies. I don't recognize it as other magic. It's just force stuff. I could see it being force stuff. Yeah, I think it's visualization, the way they like the crystal glows green, and then the spider's eyes glow green. The one thingy with the stalactite and the making it fall, right? Like similar kind of glowed green. I don't know. Sure, I could see it being that.
I feel it's magic. I feel, especially if you watch Clone Wars, I thought they had some episodes where um, they did introduce magic with a certain race, but I don't remember exactly
It's
if
the
that is correct, though.
Night Sisters of Dathomir.
Yeah.
So for those of us like myself who have not seen the Clone Wars yet, Jeremy, can you kind of maybe elaborate on that?
Darth Maul, the planet that he's from, is called Dathomir, and there's also these beings called the Night Sisters from that planet, and they're just purely based on like magical powers as opposed to force powers. They actually do not like Jedi because during the Clone Wars era, Grievous led a battalion to wipe out the people of Dathomir, and they associated his lightsabers with Force users. So they actually don't like Jedi. Little fun fact. That's why when you play the video game Fallen Order and you go to Dathomir and you encounter one of the main characters, which is a Night Sister, she has those tendencies to not like Jedi. But if you play those games, you get to see that magic a lot because she follows your party quite a bit.
Interesting.
There definitely seems, I would to kind of bolster Kyle's statement of it being more magical. The lizard mouse thing, I can't think of anything force based that would speak to that. But yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of disagreeing with the force aspect of it. Just the things that the staff does are not things the force would do. There are plenty of opportunities to like use it to lift, the boulder out of the way. And the way that it tricked the spider, it could have been a Jedi mind trick thing that it could have done, and it wasn't the same. I feel like the journey that they take is very heavily fantasy tropes. We felt like it was a D&D campaign, but it takes a lot of reference from even Lord of the Rings. I mean, the Fellowship of the Ring, Caravan of Courage, it's the same type of name. We have a wizard character, we have a dwarven axe wielding type character. It's all the tropes are there being fantasy. And I don't know, maybe they thought it through as being some kind of force empowered thing, but they really didn't do enough to sell that and connect it if they were thinking that ahead of time.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, and anything I know knowledge wise from books or shows, I don't know if it's canon anymore, so I'm not sure if it would be relevant now specifically.
I didn't realize that the Lord of the Rings books were that old. because I know we kept mentioning that they were like the Lord of the Rings. I'm like, the Lord of the Rings doesn't seem that old. And then I looked it up, and the one of the first books it says was in 1954. That is way older than what I thought it was. Like I thought
So
these books were like from like the 90s or the early 2000s.
Tolkien had most of the story already told to his family by the uh, 40s and 50s. He had been writing that for quite some time. So, because he wrote it for the sake of the two languages that he created. So, there was definitely a very much Lord of the Rings esque vibe to the movie. I also got a lot of Dark Crystal watching it. It had that very kind of, especially with the magic. The magic was very Dark Crystal magic. I mean, I could see the idea, could it be Force stuff? But then again, I think you could almost question, I might be sacrilegious here in my Star Wars statements in the next few moments here, but that the Force could be considered magic. Being able to, telekinetically move things and change the minds through, maybe potentially telekinesis and all that nonsense that goes along with the ways that you would call it, whatever you call it, right? But yeah, I do think that some of the things were not in line with the normal Star Wars stuff.
Yeah. One of the things that I'd like to, I don't know if it's much of a talking point per se, but it's still interesting to me. And I looked it up. When on IMDb, when it lists all the people from this movie, it lists the actors and actresses that played the Ewoks. But then there's a whole other list of people that voiced the Ewoks. And so when I went back to Return of the Jedi, there's, at least from what I scrolled through the mile-long list on IMDb, none of them said voice for Ewoks. So I almost wonder if in Jedi they voiced themselves, but then when they did this movie, they had other people voice them. So it's kind of a weird change that they did. Granted, they probably didn't talk as much back then, but
well, to something, I mean, we talked about, I mean, you found a translation of words that show up on the closed captioning. I don't know that I've ever watched Star Wars, particularly Return with closed captioning. At least not with the focus on, do they have the words that the Ewoks are saying? So there's, to your point, that's yeah. But I guess my point being, there's much more language being portrayed, I think, in this movie than you get in Return of the Jedi. C-3PO basically talks with them and translates with his 7 billion languages that he knows.
I thought it was also a money thing because I thought if you didn't say any lines, sometimes they didn't have to pay you. So if you had like a specific amount of words or lines, they would have to pay you, and that's why some background characters don't really say anything.
interesting. I
I
didn't know
could be
that.
wrong. Yeah. I learned that from the Office ladies that talk about of the Office show because they're on it. And they said that.
Even Wicket was voiced by somebody else in this movie.
Hmm.
Yeah, it definitely could be a budgeting thing.
Yeah, but why would you then you're paying two different people? So wouldn't that cost more to have the voices?
So
Well, let's
You're talking
say
about
it
Return of the
costs
Jedi.
let's say it costs for Warwick Davis to play Wicket, and obviously these numbers are not accurate, but let's say it costs $100 for him to be in the costume and $300 for him to be in the costume and talking. But if you just pay the $100 for him to be in the costume and you pay some other guy $50 to do the voice acting because he's not like a known actor,
Or just like it's
it'd
easier
be
to just
cheaper.
be in the studio.
well, and
Okay.
to like the
knows?
cinematography, well, the filming method. Why I can't say the word cinematography, I don't know, but whatever. They would have not filmed. I mean, they might have said things while they were acting out the roles, but the actual portrayed voice would be edited over. And they said all of 15 words. So I'm sure they could have gotten 3 or 4 people to say Lub Dub and Gurk and Feech. So,
Kirk.
It's definitely a thing that voice actors are paid less, because I know recently, I think there was a little bit of a battle with Disney and the guy that plays Mando.
Pedro Pascal.
Oh,
Yeah, Pedro Pascal, because in season 3, he is not the one in the suit. He just is the voice actor. And I think there was an issue because he wanted more money because of, Mando's popular. But yeah.
Well, and there's an interesting level of personality that goes with the voice, right? Like, we all know James Earl Jones as Darth Vader, and he talks in any other movie, and you're like, why is Darth Vader talking about baseball, right? Like, whether it's The Sandlot or,
why is he making Simba a good guy?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I could see how Pedro Pascal could potentially have the wherewithal to say, pay me more, because his name is already being tied to that role.
I think the one last thing, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong if we haven't mentioned this already, but did we mention how creepy the Ewoks look in this movie with their eyes?
no.
Yeah, the eyes bugged me. They definitely looked like teddy bears that didn't have mouths that moved, and then 3/4 of the way into the movie, they now have tongues and like the ability to mouth words in English. Oh my goodness, there was some weird mouth things happening. Show.
Their teeth are like at least their front teeth are like as big as their eyes too. They're like,
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think in Jedi they were basically just like pop figures where they were like big black pupils essentially, and then when the Blu-rays came out, they added the ability to blink, but nothing like this where they like have color to their eye and then like really emphasize it. I think that's the part that probably sticks out the most to me about their costume design is the eyeballs.
as creepy as they were, that weird rat creature was even creepier to me. It was like, ugh, like gross, creepy, crawly, weird, almost like you guys keep referencing something and I don't know the reference, but to me it's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like some of the weird rat creatures, not Splinter, not Mr. Splinter, but like some of the other creatures that they fight.
It's
Razor and Togar. That was a turtle, but
it's a rodent of unusual size.
yes,
ROUS.
from The Princess Bride.
Gotcha.
If you see it, you would recognize that. The one thing I noticed, and so that's why I keep referencing it, is they looked like RUSs that had no fur, except for their like main area right around their neck. It's because there wasn't it was just a singular, but yes, it does look. I'll show you.
Okay. Also, Gorax had some long, luscious locks. They gave him some serious hair, so I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, whatever product he's using, I would like to know.
Yeah, me too. So I'm losing all mine. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about for Caravan of Courage?
I would say I would give it 2 thumbs up.
2. Wow. I would say it exceeded my very low expectations going in. I think it's worth a watch. It looks pretty good. It's really lacking in its plot and characters, but it looks like a real movie. Maybe one up, one down. I don't know.
So I think
It was a fun little adventure.
if you tried to watch it through the lens of our movies today, right? Absolutely, it's thumbs down. Absolutely. But I guess I grew up watching those movies. I'm the oldest one in this group here, and it very much felt like All right. That if I watched that then, it would have been a pretty good flick. Like I said, the whole Dark Crystal vibe is it very much feels that way. So like that's why I did the two. I mean, is it a fantastic movie? No, of course not. But
Yeah, it's like quintessential kind of 80s fantasy
yes.
style, which I like. I like that kind of charm. Obviously, like the dumb effects I've talked about before, like even in the other Star Wars movies. I love that stuff. I get a good laugh and it makes it enjoyable, even if it's not perfectly done. So for me, the thumb up went for just kind of like the laughs and the joy we had watching it. The thumb down is there's some things that are very wrong with this movie that could have been done better.
True.
Well, I'm glad to hear some positivity. I'm glad I didn't make you just sit through a terrible movie.
No,
It's
you'll
better
do
than
that.
holiday special.
Yeah.
Excited to see the next one.
Yeah, I'm curious. I know it's called the Battle of Endor, but something tells me maybe it won't be like the one that we know of. Maybe it'll be a completely different like Ewok battle, but I guess we'll just see when we get there. So that was our talk on the Ewok Adventure Caravan of Courage. Again, we just talked about that there's another one that we'll be watching as well. I believe it's called the Battle of Endor, so stick around for that. But if you enjoy this type of video, make sure to make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you are notified when more of these podcasts drop. Drops a like if you like the video, and also drops a comment letting us know if you've seen this movie before and what you have thought of it. Before we go officially, thanks everybody for being on the video. I really appreciate you guys joining in this week. Kyle and Josh, you're new, and Jeff for returning. Must like it.
I have nowhere else to be.
Oh, okay, that works.
The Mace.
Yeah.
And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next.